Hello, everybody. I'm Dave Gilbert with Delphi Bracketology, part of StudentUnionSports.com, and this is Week 7 of Extra Points. This week, I'm joined by seniors Kane Meyer and Cole Rickles. This past week, we saw Tennessee almost pull another miracle comeback, and we also saw some good old-fashioned butt whoopings from Michigan and Washington. So for our week in review, let's send it over to TJ Nelson.
The first game I'm talking about is going to be how Michigan dismantled Rutgers 78-0. Rutgers actually had more total plays than they had yards. And then FSU outlasted Miami in a hard-fought game. Texas A&M ended up beating Tennessee. There was some key fumbles. Trayvon Williams had the game in the bag. Tennessee made him force a fumble out of the back of the end zone. They still came back and won in overtime. And then Pittsburgh threw a lateral to their offensive lineman, which led to them winning by only a field goal, so that was a big key in the game. Back to you guys in the
Thanks, TJ. College football never fails to deliver some wild plays and wild endings. Now it's time for our hot-cold segment this week from our panelist, Cole Rickles. Take it away,
Dave.
Cole.
Cole Rickles here with your hot and cold segment of the week. We're going to go with Navy. They take down number 6 Houston. It's their first top 10 win since 1984. Navy comes in with the reliable, kind of boring offense. You know, Houston couldn't figure out with all the options that they had. Houston ends it up with 304 rushing yards on the ground. Honestly, I was watching this game, and it was hotter than Brian Tonsoni trying to work out after eating a large pizza, you know? Cole Rickles here, back with your cold segment of the week. It's North Carolina. They were cold. They're overhyped after playing a feeble FSU team, and then they lose to Virginia Tech as well. Overall, it was such a cold game, I had to open up the refrigerator to heat my house. Back to you, Dave.
Thanks, Cole. This brings us to our interesting fact of the week. For this week's interesting fact, we send it over to Jesse Scouten. What do you have for us, Jesse?
Thanks, Gilby. Today's interesting facts, because, Michigan absolutely destroyed Rutgers, comes from, of course, the Rutgers terrible season. But the 78-point loss was the biggest FBS to FBS team. It was the biggest disadvantage I've ever seen. 78 points. It was 11 touchdowns to Rutgers 0. Rutgers only had 6 yards of offense in the first half. Their longest play was only 12 yards. And the attendance was 53,292 people. That's 26,646 per Rutgers first down. Back to you guys.
Thanks for that fact, Jesse. Now let's talk about some not-so-primetime games this weekend. These are games that are under the radar a little bit, but could still be good. I'm going to keep an eye out on Arizona State at Colorado. The winner of this game will be on top of the Pac-12 South and be in the driver's seat. What game are you going to watch this week, Kane?
This week I'm going to have the TV turned into Indiana at Nebraska. Or Nebraska at Indiana, my bad. IU's been playing some real solid football lately, and I am excited to see what quarterback Richard Legault and the Hoosiers can do against a strong Nebraska team.
What? So not so primetime game. Are you going to keep an eye on, Cole?
I'll be watching NC State at Clemson. For NC State, they have running back Matthew Days, and for Clemson, they have the combination of Watson and Williams. NC State, they just have to stay productive on the ground and shut down Watson, make him pressure him a little bit, and hopefully he turns it over.
All right. Now it's time for our tailgate tip of the week. Let's send it over to Will Schwindler to hear about tailgate menus.
I am not Will Schwindler. We had to have a substitute, so I'm Brian Tonsoni. I'm with sophomore Michael Benner making his first appearance on Extra Points. We're going to talk to you about the tailgate tip. This week's tip centers around the menu for your tailgates. Your menu should be centered around your team's schedule. Do some research on the opponents, find out what local food is well known in those areas, and serve it at your tailgate. For example, Michael, if we're playing Nebraska, what should we have?
Steak sandwiches and corn casserole.
That's excellent. And if we're playing a team from Miami, Florida, what should we have?
Cuban sandwiches.
That's excellent. And if you're playing a team from Indiana, what should we have?
Tenderloin sliders.
Tenderloin sliders. This kind of food is always good for you, makes for good conversations. Michael, tell me, what have you learned from this?
Now I know why you're close to 300 pounds.
Funny sophomore. Back to you.
This is definitely an important part of the tailgate. Now let's see how our Heisman Watch is shaping up this week. For that, we send it to Daniel Jakes.
Thanks, Gilby. This week on the Heisman Watch, we have at number 1, the human highlight reel, Lamar Jackson. After a bye week, I still don't think anybody's playing better in the country than he is. At number 2, we have Deshaun Watson, nipping at Lamar's heels after his part in the dismantling of Boston College last Friday. Number 3, J.T. Barrett keeps pace with the rest of them with his legs, rushing for 137 yards on 25 carries. Number 4, we have Dalvin Cook. He comes in at the number 4 spot after carrying the rock for 150 yards on 27 carries against a frisky Miami team. At number 5, finally, Christian McCaffrey. He kind of disappeared against Washington State last week, only having 83 all-purpose yards, somewhat of a low number for his career. Back to you guys at the studio.
Thanks for that update, Daniel. Now let's talk about our first 2 matchups this week. Our first game is number 1 Alabama at number 9 Tennessee. Lady Luck finally ran out on the Vols last week. They couldn't overcome 7 turnovers at Texas A&M. They were still made a game out of it and took it into overtime, but just couldn't quite get the job done. However, they still control their destiny in the SEC East. Alabama just keeps on rolling. They got a big win at Arkansas last week. What do you guys expect this week? What do you think about Tennessee, Kane?
No doubt in my mind that Tennessee can bounce back from this. The number 9 team is a tough team to compete against. However, they'll face a tough opponent in Alabama this week. Nick Saban's always got his team ready to go. They also have to limit turnovers, and they have to look to stop Alabama running back Damian Harris, who carried for 120 yards over 13 carries last week.
What are your thoughts on Alabama, Cole?
I think the big factor here is Alabama's defense. Tennessee is keen to turnovers, pressure the QB. He'll throw interceptions, and they're, as we see with their Texas A&M game, they were easy to force fumbles. On the offensive side, he'll hurt you if you don't put on the pressure. So he's very accurate, and he's also capable on the run. So he'll be a big factor in this game as well.
All right. Our second matchup is Ole Miss at Arkansas. This matchup produced a wild 53-52 overtime win for Arkansas last year. And don't be surprised if it's another close game again this year. They seem to have played a lot of close games in the past few years. Both teams have lost a couple games already, and they still are looking for some victories to stay in the hunt in the SEC West. What are your thoughts on Ole Miss, Cole?
Well, Ole Miss is coming off of what seemed like it could have been an upset coming into the second half versus Memphis, but they ended up pulling away. Hopefully QB Chad Kelly comes in with as much enthusiasm and vigor as he did when he rushed his brother's high school football game. That could maybe he'll show some heart on the field. But Judd and Brasley both can carry the ball, and I expect a shootout in this one with both teams having somewhat weak defense, and I expect a very high-scoring game, probably with Ole Miss in the lead.
Yeah, Chad Kelly still found a way to stay in the news even though they were on a bye week last week. What are your thoughts on Arkansas, Kane?
The run game's got to get better. Quarterback Austin Allen was forced to throw 48 times last week, and that's outrageous. The defense has to look to limit quarterback Chad Kelly's playmaking ability, and the Razorbacks should come out with a little bit of fire from the butt whooping they took last week.
All right, this leads us to our game of the week, number 2 Ohio State at number 8 Wisconsin. For our tradition segment this week, we send it over to Brian Tonsoni to learn about the 5th quarter in Madison. What do you have for us, Brian?
Dave, it's an honor to sit here and talk Big Ten football, and we're talking Wisconsin Badger football traditions. We're going to talk about the 5th quarter, the band performance after the game's over, but I think we would be remiss to not discuss the jump around that happens after the 3rd quarter, before the 4th quarter, starting in 1998. The team was struggling against Purdue, very little offense, and the sound guy played House of Pains, Jump Around, and the students and the fans started jumping up and down, and it has become a wild tradition at Wisconsin since. And if you've ever been there, you'll feel the stadium rock and shake, and it is one of the most incredible experiences. I've been there several times, and the jump around is fantastic. But even more so is the 5th quarter. The 5th quarter started in 1977 when the band would play a post-game show similar to what a lot of bands do after a college football game ends, but this one became special. They had some special music. They played their varsity song and swayed arm in arm. They also played something very famous to Wisconsin, You've Said It All. When you said Wisconsin, you've said it all. Boom, boom. Became famous, and they actually delayed that 10 minutes into their show so people would stick around and watch some of the other parts of their show. That 10-minute delay has turned into a 30 to 40-minute performance, heavily scripted by the band. They will dance, they will go into the crowd, and grab crowd members and sing, and they'll do the beer barrel polka, and of course when you said Wisconsin, you've said it all. It's quite amazing. In a stadium that seats 80,000, you will see at least 30 to 40,000 people staying around for this band performance. It is well known. It is something to see. It is something that everyone should put on their college football bucket list of going to a Wisconsin game, staying for the fifth quarter. I've had the luxury of doing a fifth quarter at an IU game when Wisconsin was there, and I was dancing with the band on the turf of Memorial Stadium. The fifth quarter at Wisconsin. It's what's good about college football. Back to you.
Thanks, Brian. That is truly a unique tradition for all the Badger fans to stay after the game and listen to their band. We usually send it to our traveling reporter Kyle Klein at this time, but he had too many cheese curds and is stuck in a bathroom somewhere in Madison. So we have a guest reporter in Madison this week. Bailey Gasser, a senior at Delphi, is already there for the game, and she is live from Mickey's Dairy Bar. What do you have for us, Bailey?
Thanks, Dave. Bailey Gasser here in Madison, Wisconsin. Got to step in the regular traveling reporter Kyle Klein. Kyle came up early to Wisconsin and had some intestinal complications from overeating cheese curds. Get well, Kyle. I'm so glad to be here at Mickey's Dairy Bar in Madison, Wisconsin. Mickey is known for its outstanding breakfast choices. The best menu is called the Scrambler. On the field Saturday, the Badgers hope to contain the second-ranked Ohio State's version of the Scrambler when they face off Heisman candidate J.T. Barrett. Barrett leads the offense of the Buckeyes and is a threat to pass or run on every snap. The best aspect of the Buckeyes may be their defense. They're only giving up 10.8 games, which is the second in the nation. On the other side, 8th-ranked Wisconsin Badgers have been the surprise of the Big Ten so far this season. Wisconsin is 4-1 and its only loss is the Michigan Wolverines in a close battle. The Badgers have won over LSU and Michigan State and are looking to move to the top of the East Division. The Badgers have used 2 quarterbacks on the season and would love to get running back Corey Clement in the run game going this week. If the Badgers hope to pull off the upset, it's their defense that have to stop the Scrambler. The Badgers did hold the high-powered Michigan offense to only 14 points. I am very biased, and a family has a house in Prairie-du-Sac, about 20 minutes north of Madison. We are true and diehard Badger fans, and I believe the final score will be 20 to 17 in favor of Wisconsin. Back to you, Dave.
Thanks for that report, Bailey, and thanks for filling in. Now let's talk about the game. Wisconsin is coming off a much-needed bye week after playing LSU, Michigan State, and at Michigan already in the first 5 weeks of the season. The Buckeyes were challenged by a tough Indiana team last week, but pulled away in the second half. What can we expect from Wisconsin, Kane?
Well, I see the Wisconsin defense coming out the same way they did against Michigan State, tough and aggressive. They got to look to stop 2 possible Heisman candidates in J.T. Barrett and Curtis Samuel. And quarterback Hornibrook has to lead his Badgers against one of the best defenses in the country. And with that, they have a chance to win the game.
All right. Ohio State's already won on the road at Oklahoma. What do they need to do to get the job done in Madison, Cole?
Well, I see Wisconsin as Ohio State's very first formidable defense that they'll have to face. IU was a good team, Oklahoma as well, but Wisconsin's on a whole new level. They barely slipped past IU, which would have been a great upset, but the key players here are J.T. Barrett. He was a little bit inconsistent against IU, and against a strong Wisconsin defense, they might have to turn to the ground game. Also, don't forget about special teams. As we saw at the IU game, they ran one past them, so that might make for a very interesting game as well. It's going to be interesting for OSU facing rigorous Wisconsin defense, so we'll see what they come up with.
All right, now it's time for our picks this week. Our first game is Alabama at Tennessee. I think Nick Saban is pretty obvious. He's the best coach in college football, and I think the Tide still get the job done on the road. What do you think, Kane?
Yeah, roll Tide. Alabama's going to be too much for the Vols this week.
Cole?
I'm going to go with Tennessee just because I want to see Bama lose.
Our next game is Ole Miss at Arkansas. The Rebels have played well of late after losing a couple tough ones to Florida State and Alabama in the first couple weeks of the season. But I like Chad Kelly and the Rebels on the road. What do you think, Cole?
Yeah, I see Chad Kelly bringing this team to a victory.
I'm going to go with Arkansas. I think they're going to have a fire under their belly, and I think they're going to get the win this week.
And in our game of the week, I think Ohio State and Wisconsin is going to come down to the wire. But I like the experience of J.T. Barrett to get the job done on the road. They've already won at Oklahoma. I think they'll win a close one in Madison. Kane?
I'd agree with that. I'll go with the Buckeyes.
Yeah, I'd say it's going to be a very close one with Wisconsin's strong defense, but I think Ohio State will get it done.
And for our last segment, we're going to talk a little bit about some upsets that we might see this week. As my upset for this week, as much as it pains me to say this. I think Indiana is going to knock off number 10 Nebraska. Coach Kevin Wilson finally has a defense in Bloomington this year. And I think they'll get the job done. What do you think, Kane? What's your upset this week?
I got North Carolina against Miami. North Carolina is coming off a big win against Florida State, and I think they're going to surprise the Hurricanes. So.
All right, and Cole, who's your upset?
My upset again is Bama losing, hopefully.
All right, that wraps it up for Week 7 of Extra Points. Thank you for watching. As always, thanks to Student Union Sports, as well as IUDGA Unique. And see you all next week.